So, does anyone care to touch on this further?
My name is Jerry. I left MAGA, and I've got something I want to talk to you about today. Something pretty serious. Um, I'm like, I'm a little over a decade or right around a decade into my recovery. I utilized cognitive behavioral therapy. I really enjoyed it. It gave me a lot of good tools. And, oh, by the way, if you hear any background noise, I've got the windows open for some fresh air. I've been muddling through a migraine today. But anyway, I also looked into ACT, acceptance commitment therapy, and that clicked with me really well because it's a bit more philosophical. Where with cognitive behavioral therapy, you take a look at your physical reaction or those little red flags, those that flush of adrenaline or something that trauma reaction usually to some given situation, be it disagreement in a conversation with somebody that you're close to, a parent, a partner, a sibling, even. I can't relate to that. I'm an only child, but I've watched other siblings interact, and yeah, cognitive behavioral therapy teaches you to catch those immediate responses and then check in on them and see is that reaction or response a positive or a negative, and if it's a negative, then change it. You know, you catch it, you check it, you change it. That's the three C's. And utilizing the three C's and looking at information that made me feel uncomfortable, I had to take a look into why does this make me uncomfortable, and that led me into my abilities to deconstruct. And fortunately, I had the opportunity to invest 10,000 hours roughly over about a 3 year period to unlearn the things that I'd learned and that were not true, and learn the reality of those, the flip side of those coins. If there was even a flip side, a lot of it was just hocus pocus. And that's actually what I want to get to today is this idea of dissociative disorders that are related to trauma. And there's on the back end on the back end of this, I'm going to be looking at schizophrenia as a comparison because it can be difficult to sometimes it can sometimes let me word it that way. It can sometimes be difficult to differentiate this unspecified dissociative disorder, which is where I'm heading, but we're going to work through the others first. We're going to look through all these, and then we're going to compare it to schizophrenia, so that there's a bit more a bit deeper understanding about what's going on here. So, in the DSM-5 dissociative disorders, the newest guide to psychiatric diagnosis is the DSM-5, released in 2013. Now, I want to say right now, I am not in any way able to make any diagnoses, but I can read the books, and I'm not certified as a peer support specialist. That's a 1 year process that I haven't started yet, but I have been suggested to move into that arena because of the fact that I understand what it takes to get out of this. I understand what it takes to untangle all those thoughts and to figure things out. Anyway, so here's a list of the dissociative disorders. There's dissociative identity disorder. And no, that's not a new label for multiple personality disorder, MPD. We'll look at that. I'm not going to look at MPD, but we're going to look at the definitions in all these. Dissociative amnesia, including dissociative fugue, depersonalization, derealization disorder, other specified dissociative disorder, and then unspecified dissociative disorder. Dissociative disorders are mutually exclusive and appear in a hierarchy, with dissociative identity disorder taking precedent over dissociative amnesia and on down the list. So, 192 depressive or okay, so let's see, change 192 dissociative disorder not otherwise specified is replaced with otherwise or with other specified dissociative disorder and unspecified dissociative disorder. So what they did was they took the dissociative disorder not otherwise specified and divided that into two separate categories, which was necessary. As I've recently learned, there are some really brilliant people that are trying to work on this. Anyway, dissociative disorders were included in the DSM-1 as dissociative reaction and became a separate category in 1980 with the publication of the DSM-3. In that edition, multiple personality disorder became a separate diagnosis rather than a subtype of a more general condition. MPD I'm sorry, it was renamed dissociative identity disorder in 1994 and the DSM-4. So I stand corrected. I learned something. I like that. DSM-5, conversion disorders, which are dissociative disorders in the ICD-10. The other main diagnostic manual is the International Classification of Diseases, the ICD-11, which the world apparently belongs to the World Health Organization. Then there's dissociative disorders of movement or sensation, dissociative convulsions, pseudoseizures, dissociative anesthesia and sensory loss, and dissociative motor disorder are all recognized in the DSM-5, but are part of of the conversion disorders section, which is also known as the functional neurological symptom disorder (FND). In the ICD-10, these disorders are within the dissociative conversion disorders section. All other dissociative disorders in the ICD-10 have equivalents in the DSM-5 dissociative disorders section. So, core symptoms of dissociative disorders: amnesia. Okay, Dr. Marlene Steinberg, who developed the structured clinical interview for dissociative disorders to assess dissociation, analyzed the characteristics of dissociative disorders, finding that each dissociative disorder could be described and understood using a combination of one of the five core symptoms: amnesia, recurrent memory problems, often described as losing time. These gaps in memory can vary from several minutes to years. Depersonalization, a sense of detachment or disconnection from one's self. This can include feeling like a stranger to yourself, feeling detached from your emotions, feeling robotic or like you're on autopilot, or feeling like a part of your body does not belong to you. Some people self injure when depersonalized, for example, in order to feel real. Derealization, a sense of disconnection from familiar people or one's surroundings. For example, close relatives or your own home may seem unreal or foreign. Episodes of derealization may happen during flashbacks. You may suddenly feel much younger and feel your present environment is unreal during this time. And this is why we're going to also be looking at schizophrenia, because there is some of that as well in the schizophrenic uh, uh, um, what's the word I'm looking for, um, symptoms, I guess, or qualifiers. Identity confusion, an inner struggle about one's sense of self or identity, which may involve uncertainty, puzzlement, or conflict. Severe identity confusion regarding sexual identity has been reported in people who have been sexually abused. I also want to point to this identity confusion situation with what's going on currently in February of 2026. with the whole Epstein file thing and what's going on within the MAGA movement and the Republican Party as a whole. I mean, I left MAGA, so it's kind of wild watching the fallout at the point where it is, because I feel like I've pulled out the ones that I can, and from here on out, I'm not trained for crisis management for this kind of thing. Just putting that out there. But when Donald Trump was pushing this whole release the Epstein files and we're gonna go after the Democrats and we're gonna and then it is what it is now, and very little has surprised me. In fact, the only detail that I've heard that was new to me so far, it was in reference to Zorro Ranch, and it didn't surprise me at all that it was a Trump supporter that bought it. Anyway, moving on, moving on. I'm not here about that. Well, kind of I am, but identity alteration, a sense of acting like a different person some of the time. Recognizable signs of identity alteration include using different names in different situations, discovering you have items you don't recognize, or having a learned skill which you have no recollection of learning. Manchurian candidate esque. I'm not saying that's what it is, but that's a discussion for another time. Mild identity alteration is widespread in the non-clinical population and does not cause difficulties for the person. For example, a person assumes different roles but remained aware of this alteration. Mood or behavior changes which don't feel under your control, but don't involve using different names, or changes in memory or perceived age, etc., indicate moderate identity alteration. This is common in non-dissociative disorders, for example, in borderline personality disorder. So let's go back up here to this list, and we're going to take a look at DID first. I've got the tab right up here. Um, what is dissociative identity disorder? Let me, oh, hang on a second. There, that's not what I meant to do. What I meant to do was this, make that text a bit bigger so we can all see it easier. There we go. What is dissociative identity disorder? DID is a psychobiological response to traumas suffered in a specific time window in early childhood, a dissociative disorder, and a complex post-traumatic stress syndrome. Now, this is not an uncommon thing within culty environments because of the fact that it's not just traumas that are suffered in childhood, it's traumas that start in childhood and continue on into adulthood because people can be mean. We're currently seeing a bunch of individuals that have fully grown bodies but not fully developed emotional intelligence and or emotional maturity, and it's really causing some complex issues for a lot of people, like the rest of the world. All right, let's continue here. How does DID develop? One, an important step in childhood development, the formation of a central integrated consciousness is impeded or prevented by repeated trauma, like the kid checking out during the abuse. Number two, the child uses radical denial and splitting to cope with the traumas, imagining that the traumas happened to someone else. Number three, the child's fantasy capabilities and imagination give the different persons states of their individual characteristics. Number four, the extremely inconsistent and contradictory behavior of attachment figures, parents, and their denial of the trauma suffered by the child, grandparents in my case, uh, and parents by the child additionally foster the dissociative coping strategy. And I'm not innocent in this case. Um, that's another conversation for another time. So, what is the cause of DID? Dissociative identity disorder is caused by overwhelming experiences, traumatic events, and or abuse occurring in childhood, particularly when repeated traumas began after or before age 5 or 6. The child's repeated overwhelming experiences usually occur alongside a disturbed or disrupted attachment style between parent caregiver and the child. Now, they're not necessarily specifically pointing at like beatings or crossing physical boundary lines. You know, I'm really trying hard to pick my words here, but I think you know what I mean. But this also deals with other overwhelming psychiatric or psychological approaches on an undeveloped mind, specifically doomsday, the rapture, fear of Russians dropping bombs on us in America. Yeah, I'm referencing back to my childhood, and so these are the things that keep the brain, the amygdala, actually living on survival mode instead of ever being able to relax. And then you add into that CSA and James Dobson's teachings, because I was a strong-willed child apparently. And yeah, it doesn't surprise me that I ended up in this category. But anyway, getting back to this article. Dissociative identity disorder is often, but not always, caused by early childhood abuse, including neglect and the failure to respond to the child. And this is something that I see in latchkey kids from the 70s and 80s. So, continuing, other early and chronic traumatization can cause it. Medical trauma involving multiple painful and prolonged medical procedures at an early age. Early childhood trauma causes dissociative identity disorder to develop by preventing the child from forming a cohesive and fully integrated or unified sense of self, known as a core or fully integrated personality during their earliest years. Now, I'm going to interject here with the whole idea of the purity culture that I grew up in the Assemblies of God Church, in that going through puberty, maturing through those phases, anything that was, because we were supposed to say chaste and pure, so anything that like the breeze that would make a 14-year-old boy excited, you know what I mean? Uh, if he was to do anything other than pray it away, I think you know what I mean. Then he's messed up his purity. But then we had a forgiveness clause. That's another. That's a doctrine to cover later. But anyway, but also harkening back to fearing Russians dropping bombs on us at any given moment, missing the rapture, having to fight the armies of the devil, and it was wild. It was wild, and I would not want anybody else to go through this, but unfortunately, there's been a lot of others that have. And anyway, moving on. Instead of integrating into a core personality, people with DID experience prolonged trauma, or people with DID experience prolonged trauma in early childhood, which causes the original different behavioral states present from birth to become parts of the personality that are increasingly dissociated or disconnected, like you're driving your body around from each other. So yeah, let me read that sentence again. Instead of integrating into a core personality, people with DID experience prolonged trauma in early childhood, which causes the original different behavioral states present from birth because parts of the personality that are increasingly disconnected from each other, which prevents them from integrating to form a core personality. Over time, the early dissociative behavioral states influenced by the trauma develop into dissociative identities, also known as dissociative personality states, distinct personality states, alternate identities, or alters. Um, the Finders cults, um, splitting personalities, cracking the spirit, Scientology. Yeah, I'm doing funky things with my hands because I'm coping. Anyway, it is generally accepted that developing multiple identities protects the child psychologically by keeping trauma memories and emotions contained with specific identities rather than overwhelming the child completely, which is probably why I don't remember massive chunks of most of the summers of my childhood. I'm just gonna I just leave it at that. So let's see. Next on the list was this dissociative amnesia. Dissociative amnesia is the most common dissociative disorder. There are several different types of amnesia and many different causes. Dissociative amnesia is not caused by head injuries or physical damage to the brain. It is amnesia which has a psychological cause. Missing time. It can occur as a part of a number of other mental health conditions, including post traumatic stress disorder and acute stress disorder, as well as dissociative identity disorder, somatoform disorder, and anxiety disorders. In any of those, uh, in any of those cases, it would be classed as a separate disorder. Dissociation amnesia can last for between days, between a few days to a few years, but it is typically less than a week. The period of time which cannot be remembered can range from minutes to decades. Dissociative amnesia explained. The second part of the video involves a case caused by the suicide of a loved one. I'm not sure what that's all about. The DSM-5 states that the key characteristic is, quote, the inability to recall important autobiographical information that one should be successfully stored in memory and two, ordinarily would be readily remembered, criteria A, end quote. Because there is no neurobiological damage or toxicity, and the difficulties are in retrieving a memory which was successfully stored, the amnesia is always potentially reversible. Potentially reversible. Neurocognitive disorders, including memory loss, usually include cognitive thinking and intellectual impairments in memory. These are not present in people with dissociative amnesia. Dissociative amnesia is more likely in people with a history of multiple adverse childhood experiences, especially if they included physical or sexual abuse. People who have experienced interpersonal violence, for example, domestic violence and physical assaults, and the risk of in, and the risk increases with severity, frequency, and violence of the trauma. Clinical interviews to diagnose dissociative amnesia include the CSID-D revised by Dr. Marlene Steinberg and the Dissociative Disorders Interview Schedule, the DDIS. Both of these are capable of diagnosing any dissociative disorder and a number of other disorders as well. Three common types of dissociative amnesia are localized amnesia, selective amnesia, which may occur along with localized amnesia, and generalized amnesia. We'll go back and we'll look at that graphic here in just a moment. Generalized amnesia may involve the complete loss of a person's identity in addition to all memories of their past. Other forms of dissociative amnesia can also occur. People with generalized amnesia, the most severe type, may also lose semantic knowledge, previous knowledge about the world. and procedural knowledge for getting well learned lessons. So let's go back up here and look at this. We've got localized amnesia, failure to recall events during a specific period of time. Selective amnesia, some but not all events can be recalled during a period of time. Only part of the traumatic event may be remembered. Months, years of intense combat, or child abuse. And then generalized amnesia, complete amnesia of one's life history, may forget their identity, sudden onset, rare. People with dissociative amnesia are often unaware or only partially aware of their gaps in memory. No permanent damage occurs. It is reversible. Adopted from DSM-5, and that's the American Psychological Association. So we got to systemized amnesia. Systemized amnesia is amnesia for a category of information. For example, no memory of family, no memory of a specific person or childhood sexual abuse. Continuous amnesia is unable to form new memories. Microamnesias are also typical in dissociative disorders. The amnesia is for very, very brief periods of time. The International Society for the Study of Trauma and Dissociation gives the example of forgetting the contents of a conversation from one moment to the next. The person may struggle to work out what was discussed while trying to avoid the other person realizing it. Dissociative amnesia has been previously known as psychogenic amnesia and hysterical amnesia. And then the DSM-5 diagnostic criteria for dissociative amnesia. The newly revised guide to diagnosing mental disorders is the DSM-5, released in 2013, gives the following diagnostic criteria. A, okay, this is code 312. A, an inability to recall important autobiographical information using or usually of a traumatic or stressful nature that is inconsistent with ordinary forgetting. Note, dissociative amnesia most often consists of localized or selective amnesia for a specific event or events, or generalized amnesia for identity and life history. B, the symptoms cause clinically significant distress or impairment in social, occupational, or other important areas of functioning. C, the disturbance is not attributable to the psychological effects of a substance, alcohol or other drug abuse, or a medication, or a neurobiological or other medical condition. For example, partial complex seizures, transient global anemia, or I'm sorry, amnesia, uh, sequelae of a closed head injury or traumatic brain injury or other biological or neurological condition. And D, the disturbance is not better explained by dissociative identity disorder, post post traumatic stress disorder, acute stress disorder. Sorry, stress. Boom. Let me try that again. Acute stress disorder, somatic symptom disorder, or major or mild neurocognitive disorder. Specified if, all right, so yeah, code 313 with dissociative fugue, apparently purposeful travel or bewildered wandering that is associated with amnesia for identity or other important autobiographical information. So in a dissociative fugue, during a dissociative amnesia with fugue, a person normally acts in a way which is purposeful and has a specific goal. Fugue states may last for days, weeks, or longer. A fugue occurs when there is sudden and unexpected travel away from home or work in combination with amnesia for a person's past, and either identity confusion or assumption of new identity. Dissociative fugue is also known as a psychogenic fugue and was previously a separate diagnosis, but was combined with dissociative amnesia in the DSM-5. So let's see, people experiencing a fugue appear normal to others and are often unaware of their amnesia. It can be distinguished from amnesia and the aimless wandering sometimes present during seizures using tests such as EEGs, uh, EEGs to establish if there's a relationship between seizure activity and the amnesia. ICD diagnostic criteria, and I'm not going to continue on that with that, but I will have all the links below. So depersonalization and derealization disorder. So what do we got over here? Depersonalization, derealization disorder. Depersonalization, derealization disorder is a dissociative disorder. People with this disorder may describe some of these experiences or feelings. I am no one. I have no self. My head feels as if it's filled with cotton wool. I feel robotic, like an automaton. I know I have feelings, but I don't feel them. My thoughts don't feel like mine. I feel like I'm watching myself from outside myself or out of body experiences, split self. Everything around me seems artificial, lifeless, or dead. It's like there's a glass wall between myself and the world. Things look blurry, like being in a dream or looking through a fog, a visual distortion. Things look too large or too small. Sounds are muted or too loud. So in depersonalization disorder, DPD, depersonalization derealization disorder, so DPD, types of experiences, there's a numbing of emotions and bodily senses, feeling unreal or detached from yourself, altered bodily perceptions, things seem unreal, derealization, and distorted sense of time. What else we got down here? Many people experience brief episodes of depersonalization or derealization in their lives. A diagnosable disorder only exists if the symptoms are persistent, not better described by another diagnosis, and not only occurring when under the influence of drugs or alcohol. Causes. Many people with this disorder have a history of childhood trauma, particularly emotional abuse and emotional neglect. Others, other known factors include witnessing domestic violence raised by a parent or raised by a parent with a serious mental illness or a sudden death or suicide of a relative or close friend. Sorry. The average age of onset is 16, and 95% of the people with symptoms or have symptoms prior to the age of 25. Another known cause of this disorder is recreational drug use, substance use, especially marijuana, ecstasy, and ketamine, special K. Elon. Depersonalization, derealization disorder caused by drug use may be cured by stopping the use of the drug that caused it. Elon. This is because the disorder can only be diagnosed if the symptoms continue after stopping using the drug. Marijuana or cannabis use may occur prior to new panic attacks and depersonalization, derealization symptoms. And full disclosure, there were times in my earlier years of smoking cannabis, consuming cannabis, that I I kind of checked out a few times. Not really so much a problem anymore. I'm a old head on this one. So, what kind of diagnostic tests are there available? The Steinberg depersonalization test is a brief self-report questionnaire which can be used alongside an evaluation by a clinician to determine if depersonalization is present. Depersonalization derealization disorder can also be diagnosed using clinical interviews, including the structured clinical interview for dissociative disorders, known as the SID-D revised, which can diagnose all dissociative disorders. The dissociative experience scale can also aid diagnosis, and then there's that information. And then diagnostic criteria, the new guide, 2013, code 300.6. A, presence of persistent or recurrent experience of depersonalization, derealization, or both. Depersonalization, experiences of unreality, detachment, or being an outside observer with respect to one's thoughts, feelings, sensations, body, or actions. Derealization, experiences of unreality or detachment with respect to surroundings, individuals, or objects are experienced as unreal, dreamlike, foggy, lifeless, or visually distorted. B. During the depersonalization or derealization experiences, reality testing remains intact. C. The symptoms can cause clinically significant distress or impairment in social, occupational, or other important areas of functioning. D. The disturbance is not attributable to psychological effects of a substance, drug abuse, medication, or other medical condition, i.e., seizures. And E. The disturbance is not better explained by another mental disorder such as schizophrenia, panic disorder, major depressive disorder, acute stress disorder, post traumatic stress disorder, or another dissociative disorder. Yeah, I'm working through this a little better now. So, differential diagnosis, illness anxiety disorder, for example, if there is a vague, if there are vague physical complaints or fears of permanent brain damage, so that so if you're scared about brain damage, I've dealt with a little illness anxiety myself. It didn't so much become really a disorder. Well, I don't know. And I'm not giving any medical advice here. I just want to interject that. I want to remind everybody. I am not a clinician. I've worked my stuff and I'm wanting to share my insights on this. Then there's major depressive disorder if only numbness, deadness, and apathy occur. Obsessive compulsive disorder, other dissociative disorders, runs through that list again. Anxiety disorders, psychiatric disorders, substance or medication induced disorders, and mental disorders due to other or another medical condition. So those are the diagnostic criteria. I'm not going to go into the ICD thing. Let's see. Up next, we've got other, man, this is going to be a long video. Other specified dissociative disorders. So let's take a look at other specified dissociative disorder and DDNOS. Um, Dissociative disorder is a diagnosis which was introduced in the DSM-5 Psychiatric Manual released 2013. Along with unspecified dissociative disorder, it replaces the diagnostic or diagnosis of dissociative disorder not otherwise specified, DDNOS. Other specific dissociative disorder is known to be caused by psychological trauma. The equivalent diagnosis in the ICD is other dissociative conversion disorders, which also includes several different possible presentations. In common with all dissociative disorders, symptoms usually appear after trauma and include embarrassment or confusion about the symptoms and the desire to hide them. So, what are the diagnostic criteria? This category applies to presentations in which symptoms characteristic of a dissociative disorder that cause clinically significant distress or impairment in social, occupational, or other important areas of functioning predominant, but do not meet the full criteria. of any of the disorders in the dissociative disorders diagnostic class. The other specified dissociative disorder category is used in situations in which the clinician chooses to specify a reason that the presentation does not meet the criteria of any specific dissociative disorder. This is done by recording other specified dissociative disorder followed by a specific reason, dissociative trance, for example. Example presentations that can be specified using the other specified designation include the following: chronic and recurrent syndromes of mixed dissociative symptoms, identity disturbance due to prolonged and intense coercive persuasion. Um, let me go back to this one. Chronic and recurrent syndromes of mixed dissociative symptoms. This category includes identity disturbance associated with less than marked discontinuities in sense of self and agency, or alterations of identity or episodes of possession in an individual who reports no dissociative amnesia. Number two, identity disturbance due to prolonged and intense coercive persuasion. Individuals who have been subjected to intense coercive persuasion, brainwashing, thought reform, indoctrination while captive, torture, long-term political imprisonment, recruitment by sects or cults, or by terror organizations, may present with prolonged changes in conscious questions of their identity. Any of that sound like anything that's going on right now? This is why I'm concerned about the future. Number three, dissociative or acute dissociative reactions to stressful events. This category is for acute, transient conditions that typically last less than 1 month and sometimes only a few hours or days. These conditions are characterized by constriction of consciousness, personalization, derealization, perceptual disturbances like time slowing, macros, uh, macropsia, micro amnesias, transient stupor, and or alterations in sensory motor functioning. For example, uh, analgesia or paralysis. And then the dissociative, number four, the dissociative trance. This condition is characterized by an acute narrowing or complete loss of awareness of immediate surroundings that manifest as profound unresponsiveness or insensitivity to environmental stimuli, may be accompanied by minor stereotyped behaviors of which the individual is unaware and or that he or she cannot control, as well as transient paralysis or loss of consciousness. The dissociative trance is not a normal part of a broadly accepted collective cultural or religious practice. Gainer syndrome or Ganser syndrome, the giving and receiving of appropriate answers, is described as fitting within this category, despite not appearing as an example presentation. So let's see, disorder otherwise not specified. Uh, I think that's like the general portion on that. Goes a little bit deeper, but um, yeah, like I said, this is gonna be a long video. So last up here on this spectrum is unspecified dissociative disorder, which over here we've got unspecified dissociative disorder is a diagnosis which was introduced in the DSM-5 psychiatric manual released 2013, along with other specified dissociative disorder. It is a partial replacement for the previous diagnosis of dissociative disorder not otherwise specified, DDNOS. The equivalent in the ICD is dissociative conversion disorder, unspecified. The American Psychiatric Association's DSM-5 diagnostic criteria for unspecified dissociative disorder are. Um, I'm going to skip that blurb. You can pause and read it. It's basically what I've been reading before. This diagnosis, along with other specified dissociative disorder, act as a residual category for dissociative symptoms which do not fit within a more specific category. And either the clinician decides not to specify the reason that the criteria for other dissociative disorders aren't met, or not information or no information exists to make more specific diagnoses. As described above, there must be clinically significant impairment or impaired functioning as a result of the dissociative symptoms. As a result, or I'm sorry, pardon me, back up. If a reason can be specified, for example, dissociative trance, then other specified dissociative disorder should be diagnosed instead. Both other specified dissociative disorder and unspecified dissociative disorder have been assigned diagnostic codes. There they are. So the diagnostic criteria, the most recent approved version of the ICD, the diagnostic guide published by the World Health Organization, was published in 1992. That was the ICD-10. The ICD-11 is currently being planned. The draft of the ICD-11 criteria for unspecified dissociative disorder gives this description. We have dissociative disorders unspecified, no description given. Last updated November 2014. Dissociative conversion disorder. Let's see. No evidence of physical disorder that can explain the symptoms that characterize the disorder. So if they're looking at, I mean, the brain is a part of the body. It's a major portion of the body. It runs everything. And so if they don't have another explanation, then they're going to the brain. But they want to make sure that the disorder can't already be explained by something else. This is why science matters. This is why psychology matters. And this is why physical medicine should also be seen as including mental health, because with the mental being in the brain and the brain controls the body, it's part of the body. Mental health is physical health. Anyway, I'm getting on a rant. Yeah, I've worked out. I think I'm on. I think I'm past the migraine. So last up, I want to just take a quick look at schizophrenia. Let me let me make that larger so you can see it. Schizophrenia is a mental health disorder that changes how you think, feel, and act. It can cause delusions, hallucinations, and disorganized thinking. While there's no cure, treatment like medications and therapy can help manage symptoms. Continued care and support are essential. And so, what is schizophrenia? Schizophrenia is a mental health condition that affects how you think, feel, and behave. It can make it hard to know what's real and what isn't. It can lead to symptoms like delusions, hallucinations, and psychosis. And 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 these symptoms can have major impact on your daily life and relationships. So that's why I'm saying it can be difficult to differentiate this thing, schizophrenia, and this thing here, dissociative or unspecified dissociative disorder, because when you're constantly being hit on with spiritual warfare, and you're constantly being hit on with being tempted by the devil himself, like he's omnipresent or something, or maybe it's one of his demons, um, that going through puberty, that sexual thoughts are satanic or demonic temptations or whatever. Biology. It's biology. But when you're also getting that mixed into your politics, like on Flashpoint Media and or Fox News, because there is an overlap. I have seen people from Flashpoint Media, and that's Ken Copeland, Hank Kunneman's thing. Um, You can look at some of my other videos. This video is going to be a standalone one. But this altered perception of the world, this we have the real understanding, and that's why some of them are flat earthers, and some of them believe that we're gonna live on Mars, which anyway, and it just that's why we see. I honestly believe, and the way I got here was I was listening to another ex-evangelical who's turned into a clinical therapist. Now I'm looking to eventually maybe become a non-clinical therapist, certified non-clinical therapist. But she was being interviewed by Shalise Ansola at Cults to Consciousness, and Shalise was like, "I I wish there was a diagnosis for people with these culty mindsets." And his woman's like, "There is. It's in the DSM-5, unspecified dissociative disorder." So I went and looked it up, and this is where I am. Uh, I I've known people with schizophrenia, and some of them coped much better than others. I can tell you that a schizophrenic meth head is no bueno. Uh, anyway, that's a whole nother story that I don't want to get into. But yeah, unspecified dissociative disorder definitely diagnoses cult brain because it will automatically discount any facts. I mean, the Earth is more than 6,000 years old. The fossils were not put there by the devil to cause confusion. Um, Humans are problem solving apes. There were no ancient aliens involved in building the pyramids or Stonehenge or there's just Atlantis was a thought experiment. I had a lot I had to learn. I had a lot to unlearn. Um, oh yeah, hell's not real either. Hell is, as they teach in the church where I grew up, that was taken from Dante. That's a conversation for another time. Anyway, I've rambled long enough about this. I really have. And if you've definitely stuck to the end of this, I thank you so much. That tells me that you're really wanting to understand what's going on here. And like I said, this is my view being ex MAGA. This is my view, having worked my own recovery and learning how to use these tools, including meditation. And I even tried some yoga and some Tai Chi. I need to get back to those. Those are great for body movement. I have neurological issues. I have arthritis. I My body's messed up, man. A lot of it has to do with trauma. The body keeps score. And there is a distinct link between childhood trauma and autoimmune diseases. I'll see about pulling that article up and reading it out sometime in the relatively near future. In the meantime, I'm going to go polish off nursing the rest of this migraine so that I can go join my partner and the rest of whoever shows up for Ash Wednesday services this evening. Um, Today is what, February 18th? Yeah, February 18th, 2026. So if you're a practitioner of Christianity, or if you're willing to associate with progressive Christians, because there's humans that treat humans like humans, or you know, I would be a good Ash Wednesday. If you don't, that's cool too. I'm an agnostic, but I like the people. And yeah, I had to take yesterday off. Well, I didn't have to take yesterday off. I opted to take yesterday off to do some advocacy work. Details don't matter. The details don't matter. Um, my higher priority was to help my neighbor over making videos. That's what it boils down to. All right, folks, I'm out of here. Um, Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. Get the rest you need. Try to get friendly.